record it. Welcome everybody to the Growing Commercial Service Roofing Division webinar. Go ahead and put where you're calling in from right here in the chat. We got Miami, Colorado, Texas, Las Vegas, South Carolina. Great to see many of you. I know some of you, I don't know all of you. And so I'm glad you're here. Puerto Rico, wow, that's awesome. It's beautiful down there. Well, really glad everybody is here. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right in and just get started with this webinar. So what we're going to do is do some introductions and share a little bit, and then we will get right in. So if you have not met me yet, my name is Ryan Groth. I am the CEO and founder of Sales Transformation Group. And if you don't know who we are a sales growth and transformation platform serving the industry of construction, trades, home services, commercial services. We are here to serve and bring a transformation through our platform. Typically, when people are working with us, they were struggling with maybe a lack of predictability in revenue. They didn't have a really good sales process. Perhaps they couldn't recruit somebody. They didn't have a system, a process to grow any part of their business. And so they're looking to us to do that in a way that's lined up with their shared vision as an owner and a founder of their company, getting people bought into that shared vision and have a methodology that you can count on to bring consistency of sales in your business. I know right now is a pretty important time, considering many of the people we talk to are having issues with material shortages. And so this is the time, if you are in any service business, to get into the service business and grow it, because it's not as reliant on having to have a bunch of material be shipped and available, because you're able to service, repair, and grow that part of your business. And specifically in roofing, this is something that we know is very important. It's now more important than ever to begin a commercial or even residential service function. And so if you guys don't know my background, my parents were in the contracting business. I was hopeful to be a second generation owner and be successful in their business, but the recession took them out. It was a huge struggle to watch them kind of go through that. It actually, it was just a challenge. And I was playing collegiate baseball and tried to play pro ball, which I did a few seasons. And then I look back and I'm like, wow, if they just had some of these systems and processes, the coaching that's available today, they would be okay. And so after that, I ended up realizing through networking and working with the South Florida contractor that's in roofing, the impact of coaching and sales process and sales methodology within this industry. And I said, wow, if somebody focuses on relationships, service, and a sales team and gets out of the bid and beg, quote and hope, spray and pray, bid it and forget it philosophy that many contractors live under, and other salespeople, quote unquote, man, they would be so much better. And so I bring that energy of being a pro athlete before and just wanting to serve and see an impact. And so I did a few years of coaching with the roofing contractor and a bootstrap CRM company, and added additional coaching services. And then it just made sense for me to step out on my own and start Sales Transformation Group. And so in February, it will be 4 years since we started. And so I'm really grateful. We have over 500 companies on our platform working with us and experiencing our product and our content and our coaching in some form or fashion. So I'm very grateful, because if we go on to the next slide, the other speaker we have today is Brian Mitchell, who I had met in my former life before starting STG. And Brian has actually joined STG as a subject matter expert. He's one of our experts, and he is specifically diving into roofing and service, and he's helping with estimating and other areas of the business, already bringing so much value to our current clients. So if you are already working with Brian as a client, just put in here, I am, it's awesome, we love Brian. Put something in the chat that just helps us see if you're already working with Brian, because we know he's bringing so much to the table. But we're grateful for having Brian on our team at STG to make an impact and impart systems, processes, and a proven blueprint to help you grow service profitably and predictably. So Brian, thanks for jumping on. Love for you to just introduce yourself for those who've not met you yet, and so they get a taste of who you are.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Well, as you can see here, I've been involved in roofing for the last 20 odd years. And I'm going to, I was mentioning to Ryan earlier today that when you get to my age, people say, can we have a photograph to show you, on the webinar? And then I send them a photograph and they say, well, do you have a picture of your family that we could show? So that's, let me go to that. So I've got the 20 years of roofing background, worked in a large company, helped build a service business from scratch, and it's a big one. But then I've also got the advantage of having developed training courses in the past. And I think I was influenced most by my years in the Navy because everything was process driven. And so I've written manuals for the cruise industry and then quite a few for the construction industry as well.
Awesome. Yeah, Brian, you bring a very, very tremendously diverse background to our industry. So, but yeah, 20 plus years in the industry of construction and roofing. And, they began with a startup of a couple of trucks and we're going to do service. And by the time you came and gone a couple of times, and was a big impact in bringing leadership to that department, that they left with 37 trucks. And so that's pretty impressive. So what we're going to talk about today is a few of the headline topics we shared about in this webinar is the best lead sources for commercial service. We're going to dig a deep dive into that. We're also going to take a deep dive into the key steps to pre-qualifying service leads. And we're going to talk about the difference between pre-qualifying and qualifying and that main difference. And then the roof deficiencies you can profit from and how to go from unpredictable income to profitable service business. And then the important qualities to look for in your 7-figure sales team. All right. So that is going to be important. And so what we want to talk about, but first is this concept of the stages of service. So Brian, why don't you go ahead and pose this question before we move on to the next slide?
Yeah. So, what I said here is, what would it be like to grow a business with a blueprint for success in front of you? And a lot of guys, I'm sure on this call, and you and I would have loved to have that, right? Just to know what it should look like, big picture. But not only that, is business isn't linear, right? You get problems in business all over the place. And so when we look at a service business, you want to look at what's the flow of a service business, but then what's your particular problem right now, and then dive into that. And so that's what we've put together. But today we want to get into training some specific things on those questions. But I just wanted to cover that approach because it's complex, right? But it's not really complicated if you take one piece at a time.
Yeah, there's this thing called chunking, and I don't know if you've ever heard of this before, but I heard a story about somebody's actually eaten an airplane before. So how did they do that? Well, they brought the airplane down to like sand size, and so it's like, I've eaten an airplane. It's like, that sounds crazy. So it's like, how do you build a $10 million service department, right? When you have 0 trucks and you just have a couple of accounts who call you and your subcontractor crews does the fixing, and now you're gonna have a $10 million business. Like, how do you do that? And so what we have is, this is actually a preview of our Service Accelerator program that Brian has put together in partnership with SDG. So essentially, all these 25 steps, we take a deep dive. So I know we're going to get into training. I just want you guys to know, if you decide you want to learn more and to actually work with us and work with Brian and our team to help you guys start, grow, build, develop your service department, we just break it down into these 25 modules and help it be digestible, kind of like eating an airplane, so we can build something awesome. So,
Brian, and I just wanted to add that we have a bunch of guys in this training now. And what's great is some of them have got 12, 15 trucks running already. And then some of them are brand new. But so now you get this interaction with, each other as well, which is really helpful for me as well. I'm loving it.
Yeah, great. Well, we promise you training. So let's dive right in. First topic, the best lead sources for commercial service. And if you're on this call and you want to ask questions, feel free. You can ask some questions. Hopefully we're providing a lot of value. and we'll leave some room for Q&A as well at the end to answer those in live time. So Brian, what do we got here?
Well, before I talk about the best lead sources, let's just talk a little bit about how we think about what those lead sources should be. So when you look at a business, you're looking at the constraints in each area of the business, and then you want to leverage the strengths of that business to find a solution, right? You don't want to start from scratch. You don't want to start again. There's strengths that you can leverage. And so when you start a service company, you're going to have some technicians to do the work, and you've got to have some sales to feed the technicians. But you need to know how many leads you need to feed that beast, right? Because you got to feed it every week. Unfortunately, those guys show up every week. You got to pay them. So how many leads do you need to feed them per day? How many do you need per week? How many do you need per month, per quarter, per year? And you got to track that. Metrics are really critical, right? And we say this all the time, right? What gets measured gets done. You got to do that work. So we got to know what our goals are so that we can plan to get the best leads.
Totally.
But let's talk about leads for a second. So in the service business is a little different to the re-roofing business because we got recurring business. You know, it's small bits of recurring business. Re-roof, you do it once, 25 years later, do it again. So we're looking for customers for life, like customers for the life of the roof, for the life of your business. So obviously we got to use all the modern techniques and technologies to get the leads, which you guys do an awesome job, by the way, Ryan, of investigating that and training that. And in service, we really need to be engaged in our local market. Your clients are really people who own and manage buildings, right? Who make a lot of roofing decisions. So what I love about this business is the name tells us what we have to do to get leads. Service. We got to serve. So the way to engage your target community is really the approach of how can I serve you? And although we repair leaks, that's not really the definition of what we do. We're really in the asset protection and roof life extension business. That's a seriously important asset, right? It's protecting everything below it. So your clients are going to be property managers and roof owners, people who make decisions on roofs, but they're going to be part of organizations. And because service is local, you can only travel a certain distance to repair something, right? Property manager organizations, small local trade organizations, small business groups. And it's not just showing up. You need to be engaged. You got to be on the committees. You got to be on the boards. And I know this is really hard, but you're going to have to play in the golf tournaments and you're going to have to be involved in the fishing and that sort of thing to engage. But a really useful approach to this, and it just ties in so well with serving, is what about teaching roofing to these guys? You know, property managers' portfolio, the roofing part of a property manager's portfolio is maybe 20%. You know, they're busy with external, concrete restoration, elevator, etc. So most of them don't know a lot about roofing. And if you can educate them, that's a great way to be recognized as an expert in your field. Right?
Totally. Yeah, that's really important, Brian. Just like, not only being in the community to serve, but then to serve by providing expertise to them for free, essentially. And I know a lot of these property managers need to keep their, continued education units up, and they have to stay connected. So you guys could actually in your state register, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm speaking out of turn, let me know, but you can register in your state to become a part of that process where educationally they need to go through classes like yours, and then you're that expert. So that's one way to kind of be positioned as an authority figure, so that if and when they need roofing help, they're already thinking about somebody who's provided that education.
Yeah, no, exactly. It works so well. And then I want to throw in one here because it's so current. Because a client of mine was talking to me about this yesterday, and it's an old-fashioned approach. um, but what this client is doing, and let me just say, he's got more work than he can handle at the moment. He's got more than a dozen trucks in his service fleet. The primary driver of his leads is visiting clients and potential clients to find out what's going on, how can I help you, what's coming up soon. And I mean, what better way for somebody, to spend their time to serve than going to find out how can I serve you?
It's like, and we call that an account development meeting in our sales accelerator program. So if you're a salesperson in there, we call that, an account development meeting, and it's something we could set a goal for. Say, I want to do 1 a week or 2 a week, depending on the number of accounts you have. And that's different than meeting prospecting, right? There's a hunting for new business, which is likely what you'll do a lot of when you start. But what about once you land an account that spent $5,000 with you? Like you're going to be much better served going out to that new account that just spent $5,000 with you to check in than it is to try to find a brand new client with just cold outreach, right? And so what's amazing is that most companies in roofing, what do? They get that client once, and then when they have another leak, they'll call back, and then they'll try to fix it, and hopefully they're happy. And then when they have another leak, they'll call back, and when they think it's time to re-roof it, they'll tell you that they think they need a re-roof, and then they'll say, okay, cool, I'll give you a re-roof price. And it's basically, where does the expert and the servant and the person to bring that proactive consultation? I mean, these people know nothing about roofing, it's almost like me going to the dentist and saying, hey, I got a cavity, can you fix it? Hey, I want a root canal today, can you do that? And it's only when I'm in trouble versus them scheduling me for a cleaning and then trying to be proactive and giving me, I got this nice preventative toothpaste now that they give me instead of giving me a cavity. So, and telling me I have a cavity, but because they said it'll last a couple of years if I do this, and extend it. Anyway, it sounds so simple, but you got to have a sales function, or at least invest in the people who have their time. There's enough margin in their week to actually do that, right? And a lot of the problem that I see often is you have talented people who are doing everything. They're wearing too many hats, and they're just not and they should be spending 80% of their time, in sales related activity. And in commercial service, that account manager should be able to spend 80% of their time with clients, or prospective clients as a result of those relationships that they fostered already that created a referral.
Yeah, and Ron, I'll just throw in a little story here. Hopefully we got time. But so the best way to visit a lot of places is to lay it out on a map, right, and go place to place. But you don't always have an appointment. You don't always get past the gatekeeper. So find something unique that you can leave behind in addition to your business card. I've got this accent, right? So it's, in some ways, it's a bit of a negative because who's this foreigner coming in here? But on the other hand, a lot of people think I'm Australian. So what I started doing was, I don't know if you're familiar with the Foster's oil can. It's like the biggest beer you can buy.
Yeah, that big can of beer.
Yeah. So I would leave that with my business card in the tab. And I promise you, I always got the appointment the second time I went there. People wondered, who's this guy living? Even if they were like ex-alcoholics, they still saw the humor in it.
Great. That's great.
Yeah.
Great. So that's how for lead generation. So let's talk about key steps of pre-qualifying new leads.
All right. So what I like to talk about here is, first of all, not every lead's a good lead, right? You need to qualify them. And one thing about the roofing business is, when you accept a lead, you're on a long journey to get paid, right? You invest so much in that journey to get paid. Now, I like to get 50% deposit as soon as possible, but it's still a long journey by the time you're done and paid. So before you run out and inspect a roof or repair it, use the tools that are available nowadays to look at it. So while you're on the phone with this prospect, look at an aerial view of that roof. There's a lot you'll learn and a lot of questions you might have while you're looking at it. Oh, there's a guard gate there. Can I get in? Or there's a metal gate there. Do I need a key? How high is it? Set up a questionnaire for yourself, either digital or paper and pen, so that you get a standard set of questions asked and a uniform approach. We don't need to reinvent the wheel every time. The nice thing about a questionnaire is there's room for creativity outside it. Get all the information on the form and then be creative, or while you're doing it, be creative. So ask all the questions that are on it, whether they're digital or paper. And something I like to recommend to guys is, once you've got this qualification sheet put together, make notepads out of it and put one on every desk in the company. Because then it doesn't matter who picks up the phone, you get the same information. You know what it's like when somebody says, hey, I got a hot lead for you, but I don't know what their name is or the phone number. Thanks. So, or share it on the screen, so that if they pick up the phone, if they get a lead, and then they also know what we're looking for.
Yeah, this is really good. And so, we like to talk about the word pre-qualifying versus qualifying, because pre-qualifying is just to say, is this even in the realm of our target client, right? So somebody could say, you could have somebody come in and say, I have a repair, I need a quote, or I'd like my roof's leaking, and it could be a residential home and you're not a residential company, or maybe it's you only do multifamily but you don't do flat roofing, right? So you have to have some basic pre-qualifying questions that kind of make it much easier for a salesperson, an account manager, to take that lead and run with it. So for example, what we think qualifying is in the sales process that we teach, is that they have a compelling reason to buy. There's we like to call it, we've gotten them to share their horror story, right? There's like a popcorn experience where we're eating their popcorn and watching the scene of that bad movie from their prior experience that's not working, because they're never going to hire you if they won't fire somebody else. Like, why would they hire your roofing company if they're completely satisfied with somebody else? And now that means they're just getting a price from you to get some free consulting. So yeah, this is a pre-qualification step, but are we going to be qualifying in a sense where they have a compelling reason to buy? It's costing them more to do it the way they've been doing it than it is to do it right the first time, perhaps with you, to create that value and to truly have the decision makers that care about it in the conversation. I know it's pretty common that there's that threshold up to about $5,000. Once we get past $5,000 in that property manager threshold in service, they're going to need somebody else to make that decision. So you need to know that going in before you spend all this time trying to put together a proposal and an inspection report that shows all the findings, because you could be giving all the best information in the world. They're like, oh, thanks. And they go tell their brother-in-law who they were working with all along, because you guys didn't take the time to find out what's really going on. So salespeople who are really good take pre-qualified leads and then fully qualify them to where they're closable, because you could do that heavy lifting for 30 minutes or an hour once. And then once they're an account, they're reconditioned to work with you, then go the other way. And now they're an account, right? And that's what we want. So really good salespeople have like a kind of a healthy degree of skepticism. And that's what this is designed to do, because look, we got a lot of time, energy, money, and resources going into serving those clients, right? And Brian, like, we don't want, like, give me an example of a really bad client. And then what's an example of a really good client? Like, just give me a couple of, give me the contrast so people could see the impact of having a system that filters out the bad fits.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to answer it in this way as well, because obviously, the one thing is you've got a little convenience store that is run down, and this guy is not going to spend any money on repairing this thing. You could actually just drop off a can of bull and let him do it himself, because that's what's going to happen. And then you got companies that are managing multiple roofs. So I like to classify my leads. Now you can't always do this on the call up front, But when you hang up that phone, you should be classifying your lead and thinking about and looking at how many roofs do they manage? You know, what size are they? Who's serving them at the moment? What's the potential of this lead for you? Do your homework. That 5 minutes of homework, that might also change who you allocate that lead to, right?
Right.
If this guy's got millions of square foot of roof, you might not want your brand new rookie out there. Maybe he wants to go along to learn something.
It's a great point. Really good. Really good. So that is how pre-qualification, the best practices there. Roof deficiencies that you can profit from. So what does that mean, Brian? Like can you profit from all deficiencies, or there's something that's more let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I suppose just to clarify, you know, we use the word deficiencies that we're talking about things wrong with the roof, right? Problems with the roof, pitch pans that need refilling, base flashings that have come apart or whatever. And our industry's really maturing well. The NRCA and those guys are doing a terrific job of making us more and more professional. But one of the questions I like to ask account managers and my students is, on a typical roof, and let's just use a single ply roof as an example, TPO or PVC or EPDM, whatever it is, how many different problem issues do you think you could come across on that roof? How many different deficiencies? The answers that I get are interesting. You know, some guys will say hundreds and others will say less. But the truth really is that there are probably many variations of the same 20 or 30 issues. And when you look into the repair process, you're using the same materials to repair a lot of those same issues. So it just makes sense to me to be prepared by knowing how much you're going to charge for those problems before you visit any roof. And so I'm talking here about unit pricing.
Mm-hmm.
You should know the cost and the selling price of the problems that you run into the roof on a roof most of the time. Because then all you have to do is take the quantity of those problems, multiply them by the price, and you got a quote, right? And I've proven that, and I had 9 sales guys at one stage, but I've proven that'll get you 75 to 80% of your quote done. And I can show you how to structure your business so that the other 20, 25% can be handled. Because a new account manager might need help with something that's not on his standard list. And I know you've got more to add to this, but let me just also say, on the repair side, it's the same thing, because when we're looking at building a service business, we're not just looking at the sales, we're looking at the operations. And frankly, we can train our crews on those before they even get started. And I think in-house training for the trade, in-house training for sales, for the roof inspector, those are part of a winning strategy for a company. And I feel like we need to develop more apprenticeship programs for our industry in particular.
Yeah. And I think it's really important when you don't have to rely on the industry experience for that person to actually be able to estimate a job and define what the real problem is. And so really what we want to be is teaching somebody how to identify what the deficiency already has been defined as, priced as, and described as in its impact if it's not solved. It's like a glossary, it's like somebody comes in, they just need to learn what's already been predetermined. But it's funny how unstandardized that's already been up to this point. So really, to take matters into your own hands, you got to become somebody who standardizes that for yourself. And I know that that's something that you've done and you do with the databases we work with and with our clients, is to bring what you believe is a standard for them to work within. But ultimately, what we could do is we could take a growth-minded, sales-oriented young professional who doesn't know anything about this, who's bought into your culture, who wants to grow and be a part of something bigger. And then you just teach them how to identify deficiencies. And then they just plug it into a system that can create a 80% price. It's really close. I know we wanted to get to 100, so we can tighten that up a little bit, but you don't have to rely on that skilled laborer, that skilled person who knows the industry forever. I mean, we know how hard it is, with labor to find skilled roof techs, right? So what we want to do is train in-house. At the end of the day, that's the key. We got to train in-house. And I know that you've done a great job, Brian, standardizing that for people, but the NRCA is doing better with that. And it's really great. But let's not have a pity party about how many people don't know it. Train people on it. Let's make it easy and standardize and put it into your software databases, because that's something that's available today, and it's pretty cool. So I'd rather be doing 10 times the volume with a few margin for error to tighten up than to have everything be so perfect but have less volume, because I can only have one person I can trust go out there and take a look at it.
Yeah. And now your pool of potential employees is so much bigger, right? And you're not breaking bad habits. You're actually now teaching good habits. So it's got a lot of advantages.
Okay. So that's that question there. So let's talk a little bit about this, Brian. What's a profitable service business?
Yeah, so loaded question, but the truth is you only get paid after you've had someone complete the work, right? So there's no even revenue profit. You might get a 50% deposit, that'll be nice, but you don't get, that doesn't even cover really your base costs often at the time. So you only get paid when you complete the work. So markups and margins are really an essential part of understanding how to keep your business profitable. Something that we talk about a lot is, what's your gross profit per man hour worked? One of the constraints.
What does that mean? What does that mean, Brian? Break that down.
So very simply, take your gross profit and divide it by the number of hours that you're going to work on the roof, and look at what that number is. And then make that part of your markup strategy. Always look at both. You got markup and you got gross profit per man hour. Because one of our constraints is labor. So if that guy's going to be on the roof for 10 hours, much better if he's making you $60 an hour than $25 an hour, right? Sub that job. You don't want your guys doing that. So you want to have several ways to look at your markup and profitability. Mm-hmm. By the way, when you start working with gross profit per labor hour, and now you can also, it helps you to calculate how much work you need and how many leads you need and how many salespeople you need and how many trucks you need, because it's hard to calculate that without having those numbers. But as you're looking at markup, take time to look at material and labor separately. What would it be? In fact, there's some organizations that say you should be getting 90% of your margin from the labor side of your business and 10% from the material side of your business. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that, but what I do think is critical is look at what you marked it up and look at how that affects material and how that affects labor. Because if you're out there and you're doing a high-end product install, your gross profit per hour is going to be a lot higher than if it's a lower cost material, because you're taking your gross profit, dividing it by the number of hours, right? So it's a way to win jobs sometimes, and it's also a way to walk away from jobs, but it's a key way of looking at how you do your markup. And then just one more thing I want to add on that is, have a written guideline on how you're going to mark up, and especially on what your lowest margins are. Because you know the old story of someone's got their pen just above the checkbook and they're about to sign and pay, and you start giving, your sales guy starts giving things away, or maybe you're negotiating a big job and you really want it. It's so easy to be caught up in that. So don't get caught up in the heat of the negotiation and take a job that's going to be a loser, or take a job at the wrong number. Have a guideline that's written so that you can make sure you avoid that.
So Brian, what do you think about time and material in the pricing strategy? Do you believe that just doing a time and material not to exceed a certain number is a good strategy, or do you believe that it needs to be more everything needs to be scoped and for with a contract and a proposal? Do you believe that you do time and material on the first one and then you condition them onto a new way of buying from you? What are your thoughts on that? Because I think yeah.
So time and material is an essential part of a service company. You're going to be doing time and material. It's a critical part. People have got leaks. They got to get fixed right now. It's a lead in, as you just mentioned. But really, your profitability is going to come from increasing your average job size.
Mm-hmm.
Because your overhead to get to a roof and do a repair is the same, right? You got to drive the truck there. Your guys have got to get. So the more work you can do on that roof for that given overhead is going to make you more profitable. So we've got to find a way to get a bigger scope of work on every project.
Yeah.
And that's the strategy. Now you're going to have to do time and material, and sometimes that might be the only way. But ask your client, because if there's a leak, it's probably a reflection that roof hasn't been well maintained. Unless somebody dropped a toolbox there and caused a problem, it's probably a reflection of some maintenance issues. So there's potential.
Got it. Cool. Next slide, predictable income. Let's talk about that, Brian. What does that mean? I mean, predictability is a very important function. I mean, I know a lot of companies that are in residential roofing, they're even in a storm-oriented market, and it's very weather dependent, and there's just not a lot of consistent, predictable revenue. But then when we go into service, it creates more predictability because it's account based. It's not based on whether a hailstorm came or not. Rain happens and it comes and goes, and roofs are aging under the sun, under the weather, with the wind and the rain, and it's happening with the snow. I mean, it happens all the time. So I've seen companies really offset their winters with service, which has been amazing. Let's talk about what this means to you and just kind of expound upon this idea of predictability of income.
Yeah. So, as it says here on the slide, if you want to establish a predictable income, you really need to set up customers for life, or at least recurring customers. So you want to be the one that gets called every time there's a roofing problem. In fact, you really want to own that roof. Because if you can own that roof and service it in a timely manner, and then you maintain it, and then you restore it when it's time to restore it, or torch a cap sheet, whatever you're going to do restore it, give them extra 10, 15 years of life out of it, and then you're going to re-roof it, and then you want to maintain it again. So you really, now on the re-roofing, you might be in a bid situation, but you've got a relationship there that might even get you last look, so you've got that, you're really an asset protection expert as much as you are a roofer. And if you can extend the life of a roof with excellent service and maintenance, you're going to have clients for life.
Yeah.
And as you just alluded to, maintenance really does work. Roofs are exposed to the elements, and you might have a 25-year manufacturer's warranty on your roof, but sealant, if you look at the product details sheet for sealant, it's got 5 to 10 year life expectancy. That's preventing water going in there. So everything deteriorates when it's exposed to the weather, 365 days of the year. But your goal should be to take every roof you're engaged in and keep it, through its entire roof cycle, and repair it. And as you say, you're not going to be waiting for the phone to ring. And even if it's not ringing, you can go out and do your maintenance work.
Yeah. And when you have your maintenance work going, you have multiple trucks. Your trucks are out there with a billboard going around town, and you're able to see the client and stay connected. So it's really good to be thinking about that. So let's talk about this as we kind of land this webinar. One of our last sections here is what to look for. What are the important qualities to look for in your sales team? So let's talk about that, Brian. Why don't you just hit us with it? What should we be looking for in the sales team selling service?
So, Ron, you're really an expert at this, and I'm going to touch on some of the service-related stuff. But the first most important thing is to know that you can train the trade side of roofing, and especially on the service side, it's trained.
Yep.
It's very trainable.
Yep.
And so now you're in a position where you can look for a pleasant, hardworking individual with some good sales genes, because
Yep.
not all roofers have got great sales genes. Some of them do, and those guys are great when you can move them into a sales position because they got that knowledge. But you can teach it. And like I said earlier, now you're teaching him the good habits from the beginning. So, and Ryan, your course teaches them how to sell. I'll teach them how to know the trade. And now we've got this service sales machine that can be out there.
Mm-hmm.
I like to see a guy on 4 roofs a day get, because then you got a couple of contracts a day out of a guy.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a couple of different models. You can do the salesperson that doesn't even get on roofs. All they do is talk on phone, have initial meetings and physical presentations, and you have a technical person supporting them. That's a model that I've seen work. And then you have the model where the salesperson is able to sell, and they're able to identify the deficiency using the platform that has all the deficiency data work in there, and they'd be able to sell. But then when it becomes the larger scope work, then they can delegate that out. So there's a few ways to do it. Bottom line is we need to focus on service. The compensation plan needs to motivate them to sell service, and their goals need to be motivated to sell that, because if you land accounts and you serve them, you can have a customer for life. So what happens though, Brian, when you have somebody managing a lot of existing accounts? Do you find that they stop hunting? Do you find what are your thoughts on once the accounts mature, do you keep somebody on the front end to acquire new customers and land them and then stay in a hunting mode and then hand off? Do you think that, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I really don't I like to allocate leads geographically because that makes you more efficient, right? So it takes a team now, and sometimes sales guys want to be individual hunters. But if you can work as a team where everybody's compensated fairly and everybody knows everybody else's compensation package, and in fact, you should have different levels of compensation. So there's room for advancement. But if you can agree that we're going to do this geographically, what used to frustrate me was when I saw I had 2 or 3 guys in the same neighborhood inspecting roofs. That's just money burned. So I think geographically compensate them well. I agree with your program of bonusing against salary. Don't start watering down your margins. When you do those calculations, that can become really expensive. Bonus them against their salary. So pay them something they can live on, and have a great bonus program in there, and let them give themselves a raise. If you hit this threshold, you can move up, but don't come ask me for a raise.
Yeah, and that's really good. Which we have that in our program. But so you're saying your experience would be have account managers on different parts of the county or the city, and they can hunt and manage those existing accounts in that geographical area.
If you can pull that off, it's really an efficient way of doing it.
Yeah.
And it's not easy, but if it was easy, small boys would be doing it, right? So we got to manage our business the way that, and you got to explain and show these people, this is how you're going to be successful. This is how we're going to be successful.
Got it. It's good. It's good. Cool. We have a couple of questions. Let's get through the rest of this so we can answer some of those. We at SCG, and Brian has put together the service matrix calculator in our program. So, do you want to just talk to this for a second and just kind of talk about what the importance is to have something like this?
Yeah. So this is something, in fact, we're going to offer this to the guys on this call if they want to spend some time with me and go through this calculator, because what it's going to help you do, on the one hand, well, we're at a point now where we should be looking at 2022 and what it's going to look like, how we're going to prepare. And it's important for you to know how many leads you're going to need, and then how we're going to get those leads. And then from those leads, how many appointments are we going to have? Because it's a percentage. It's normally quite a high percentage, but it's a percentage. And then to inspect all of those buildings, how many account managers or inspectors do we need? And then what sort of closing ratio should we be expecting those guys to hit? And then it comes down to how many technicians are we then going to need? How many trucks are we going to need? What sort of infrastructure are we going to need? And so it's not only based on your goals, but I would actually do this a couple of times a year on what ifs. Because what if we have a crisis and we don't come close to our goals? What's it going to look like? And so you've actually got your whole business structure on paper. And it doesn't matter if you're just starting out or if you're doing $500,000, $1 million, 2 million, 20 million, it doesn't matter. You need to go through this, and you need a quick way to be able to play that game of what if. Sometimes you get a whole lot more successful than you expect. So how many trucks are we going to need to do that? And how can we prepare? The days are gone now where you just go pick up a truck, right? You got to order them. it's kind of crazy. So that's it's a matrix I put together, through experience, and it's something that I'm happy to share with anybody who's interested in going through that.
Yeah. So we also have some PDFs too that we can share when you go through that process. So we'll give those on the evaluation. So yeah, if you have not, if you're not working with us, just go ahead and at least get a free service evaluation, and just get your phone out and take a picture of this right here on your screen like that. And you guys will see the QR code will pop up, and you can schedule a time. If you're wanting to meet sooner, I know there's a couple of slots available. You can just email Zach, ZACH at salestransformationgroup.com. That's Zach at salestransformationgroup.com. And we'll be able to set that up and get you, a free service evaluation. And ultimately, we're here to educate and here to bring value. But if you really want to have that blueprint, that roadmap, you guys got to join and be a part of what we're doing here with the Service Accelerator program. We'd love to have you guys join us. And, the more the merrier when it comes to knowledge, systems and processes, coaching. We believe that the package that we have is very, very valuable. So, Brian, we have a couple of questions.
I think, if you can't find the appointment you want there, just make sure you email, because there are probably some slots we can put you in. Right?
Yeah, Brian Mitchell's email, Zach's email. Brian will be accompanied with one of our teammates as well. We have a quick question to wrap it up. Can you share any data on closing ratio or number of contracts won between the different styles of salespeople? The tech ones, the more the account management type that do their own inspections versus the salespeople who don't get up on roofs. I don't know if I have that data. I think I've seen both work. It's just a matter of executing. Brian, you got any insights?
Well, I love a technical sale. I love, and the fact that I can train a guy to understand the technical side of roofing very quickly give him basically a roofing Bible that, we've got with a database of material and labor, so you know how to fix it. You can teach that to a bright guy really quickly. And now you got a technical sale. So, when I'm sitting in front of you, Ron, and I'm saying, I was on your roof and I saw this and that, and I noticed that people can throw things from this deck. And I just love the technical sale. And, I think you should be in the 60 to 70% closing range with those.
Yeah, I think, service salespeople, once they land accounts, they should be, 60 to 70%. I've seen some people get up to 80 to 75. And then if you're just doing so well at the closing ratio, be like, well, how do I increase their margins and deal sizes a little bit, and
exactly that average job size, average sale size is critical, and you can change that. We got some great techniques to change that.
Yeah, absolutely. So go ahead and schedule your free service evaluation now. We'd love to give you some value. It will be a meeting in which you'll receive value, but we will also, if you're a good fit, invite you to participate in our program. It's not going to be a pitch fest. We're not going to say, become a client or you won't get any value. We're going to give you value. But we do, if you feel like there's more you want to invest into growing this service department, we are here to serve for sure. And Brian, we've probably got somewhere between 15 or so, maybe 15 to 20 accounts, roofing companies on the program now, and they're receiving a lot of value. Some people who already with 12 trucks doing 4 million are saying, man, this is really helpful and making a huge impact in shortening our existence, shortening the reality rather of getting us to the profitable places that we want to be. So
and also, how do you solve a problem in your business where you don't know really the consequence of that solution, or what area of the business should I look at to solve that? Because you may have a problem in one area, but really it's almost like a leak. You think of the metal deck on a roof, and the water gets into the roof system, and then it runs along until it finds a little weld hole where it drips, and it's nowhere near where it leaked. That's kind of like a business. These problems are popping up in different areas. So it's really nice to be able to look at the big picture and say, okay, let's focus in.
Yeah, absolutely. So hope this has been valuable. Do you guys, we have room for one question, but if you guys want to share some comments, let us know. Was this a helpful in the chat? Please put in there, was this helpful for you today? Did you get anything that was a good nugget? If you did, put your nugget, your takeaway in the chat. I'd like to hear what you thought was helpful. So put in there, write it in, write your takeaway here. What did you think was helpful? Actually, I need to do it to everyone. Here we go. Write your takeaway here. Takeaway here. Takeaways, plural or singular. Love to hear what your thoughts were, and if you guys got value from this call with Brian and today. Give it a second here. And then please schedule your service evaluation. We'd love to serve you. We'd love to get in there and find out how we can serve you in your service department growth and the life of that service department. Predictable revenue. So generating leads. So let's do a recap of everything that we just covered here, Brian. We can go back to that slide a while ago.
All right. I'll just go back this way, shall I?
Yep.
Sorry, I was just writing my takeaway here.
So the best lead sources for commercial service is definitely building relationships, serving, and getting involved in the organizations that they're a part of, golfing, fishing, you name it, speaking, educating, and building relationship, building trust. Pre-qualifying with a set of questions that if you get your free consultation with us, we'll give you guys that. You guys got to schedule it though. To meet with us. And then, so you guys have a list of questions, and that's different from actually fully qualifying the lead, but it's pre-qualifying to make sure they're a good fit. Roofing deficiencies you could profit from. It's important to identify those 20 to 30 with all the variations rather than thinking there's so many individual deficiencies. It's based on the 20 to 30 specifically. Thanks, Antoinette. And how to go from, unpredictable to profitable service business, focusing on lifetime, clients, and to look for in your 7-figure sales team. It's important to have people, good, honest, hardworking, likable, trustworthy people who want to help and want to serve and can be taught the trade. So this has been super helpful and valuable as people are forming this department in their business. Some people just have a service business. They don't do residential, anything, or commercial re-roofing. All they do is service only. And that in and of itself could just be a business, but it does lead to re-roofing as well. So thank you guys a ton. And Brian, thanks for jumping on.
Great. Should we deal, let's just talk about Antoinette's question there for a second, shall we?
Okay, cool. Go ahead.
And it relates to a sales guy in the office and a field tech on the roof versus an estimator doing both. I always go back to, and this is even before my time, so it was a long time ago, Henry Ford had the assembly line, right? And that revolutionized manufacturing. So really what you want to do is create an environment where you can train someone to take on a particular role quickly. And when you start having somebody who's an estimator and an inspector, etc., it's hard to replace that guy. So let's teach a sales guy how to go and inspect a roof with our own education system and put a proposal together. Where I would use an estimator is back in the office for that 20% that he doesn't know, because FaceTime is a beautiful thing. You get on FaceTime, show me a picture, I'll give you an estimate of what it's going to take to repair that.
It's good, really good takeaway. And Pasha, love the idea of geo-targeting my team. Teaching your roofing customers a great idea. David Arledge. Yeah, great stuff. Great. Well, we'll be doing more of these. I'm sure you guys will see more. But if you guys are, again, have not had a free service evaluation, Brian, you can put that back at the last slide. Love to invite you in to book that call and learn all about. Oh, you got a South Florida here. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was showing you how to do your geolocation of your clients.
Exactly. Great. Super good. Thanks, Brian. Thanks everybody for hopping on, and we'll be seeing you guys. We have another webinar next week for leadership. So if you guys are interested in hopping onto that, you'll be sending out promotion in invitation to register as well for the leadership webinar you'll see next week. So it's going to be on Wednesday. So anyway, thanks everybody. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Thanks for keeping us on track, and your input really was excellent.
Thank you. All right. I'll end it. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.